One by one, the 7 investigators have revealed how police officers with checkered pasts have been able to avoid accountability. Some finding a second or third act in the new departments just down the road. It's not supposed to work that way, but as 7 investigator Ross Jones has been showing us for months now, it is happening far too often. Well, tonight, his latest example, how one police department covered up an officer's misconduct, allowing him to do it again with horrifying consequences.
They say history doesn't repeat itself, but sometimes it rhymes.
The incident was similar. You know, it involved a taser, it involved excessive force.
This is the story of how one police department's decision to keep an officer's misconduct quiet
You gonna hit me with the door? Are you gonna tag me too?
allowed him to inflict even more pain just down the road.
Open the door, you get tased. Open the door, you get tased.
It cost taxpayers a fortune,
I've never had a single case resolve this quick.
triggered criminal charges,
For the record, could you state your name?
Damien Player.
and showed how ignoring police misconduct only makes it worse.
Boss man, you gotta bounce.
On a rainy afternoon in May of 2020, Highland Park Public Safety Officer Damien Player is called to the Burger King along Woodward Avenue. He's working a police shift on this day, responding to a call of a man loitering outside the restaurant.
Man, what part of leave do you not understand?
The man, who police would later suspect was homeless, ignored the officer's commands. So, from the front seat of his police car, Officer Player does what department policy says he shouldn't. He pulls out his taser and takes aim.
You wanna tag me?
The taser didn't take effect, so Player gets out of his vehicle and begins following the man, who starts to cross the street while hurling expletives.
Know why I say the police? Cause of you. Come on, you. Come over here and do it my face. That part.
Before long, Officer Player joins in with name-calling of his own, at one point calling the man a homophobic slur.
Going about your business, sissy. I'll your and your mom. Your child, your.
After trading insults, both men appear to walk away. But just as it seems things are coming to an end, Officer Player turns around and follows the man again. He briefly assumes a fighting stance before turning around and walking away. Then watch this. With the man's back facing the officer, Player deploys his taser again, then takes the man to the ground.
Now stay down.
Watch the video again. As Player takes the man down, he strikes his head hard on a concrete building, then lays motionless on the wet pavement.
23 deaths. Taser deployed.
The man appears unconscious, even as Player tries to wake him.
Yo. Wake up, man.
What does it say to you that Officer Player tased the man while he had his back to him?
In this case, it wasn't appropriate. The taser should not have been utilized in that instant.
James McMahon was a sergeant with Highland Park PD at the time of the incident.
It's a scary situation. Someone just hit their head. It's not a situation where we should have been involved in that. It's disappointing. I mean, that individual didn't deserve that.
The man would eventually regain consciousness and was taken by ambulance to a hospital. An internal affairs investigation concluded that Officer Player violated the department's code of conduct and taser policy.
Was Officer Player disciplined for this?
Other than removed from police services, no. The legal department just removed him from police services but allowed him to work fire department.
So the solution to this misconduct was to take a police officer and turn him into a full-time firefighter.
Correct.
McMahon says Player's discipline was handled by then City Attorney Terry Ford, who, he said, pushed to suspend, not terminate Player, and remove him from the police services in Highland Park. And, he said, Player got one more break, too.
Was this referred to the prosecutor?
It was not.
Should it have been?
It would be today.
Next, police officer Damien Player.
The following year, Officer Player would join the Warren Police Department. And there to pin his new badge to his chest was then Highland Park Police Chief Kevin Coney.
Hopefully I can represent the city well, my family well.
But less than 2 years later,
Open the door, you get tased. Open the door now, you get tased.
Officer Player and his partner would be involved in this traffic stop, pulling this truck driver out of his vehicle. His partner threw him to the ground in the rain as Player tased him repeatedly. Making matters worse, it all happened in centerline outside of the officer's jurisdiction. The man was charged with nothing, but the officer's conduct was so egregious that the city of Warren paid out a $400,000 settlement barely a month later. Player and his partner were charged with assault and then fired.
From what I know about Damian Player, he's not a bad police officer.
Kevin Coney told us he didn't remember almost anything about Damian Player's tasing in Highland Park, even though that's Coney responding to the scene that day where Player told him this.
Well, I ain't gonna lie, right? My heart stopped when I thought you that man.
Coney was fire chief at the time and would be appointed police chief weeks later. This July memo about Player's misconduct said he dangerously escalated the situation, causing injury to the subject of the investigation. These actions could place the city in a position of civil jeopardy and should not be brushed aside lightly, the memo said. It was made out to Kevin Coney.
You were aware of it.
Okay, that's what you say.
Your name's on the memo.
Okay, that don't mean that I knew about it was in his personnel file.
Do you read your memos?
Sometimes I do.
It recommended a 30-day suspension for Player and training in de-escalation techniques, but we couldn't find evidence he received either. The memo was never shared with Warren PD when they came to review Player's personnel file, and according to their background investigation, Chief Coney gave his officer a clean bill of health. He had no issues with Player, an investigator wrote, and there was no discipline in his file. In fact, when Player left Highland Park PD, Chief Coney reported he departed in good standing.
3 years later, he was criminally charged over the very same type of conduct that Highland Park helped to conceal.
Highland Park didn't don't keep. Okay, if that's your word, it just wasn't dealt with.
It was never shared with the department that hired him.
Okay.
Damian Player and his partner are next due in court on July 11th. Player faces 2 felonies and up to 5 years in prison.
If this had been done correctly in Highland Park, does Damian Player get a chance to assault a man with the Warren Police Department?
Not likely.
Well, in a statement, Warren Police told me they would have never hired Damian Player had they known what we just revealed. Kevin Coney left Highland Park in 2021. He insists today that while he was chief, he was really just a figurehead who answered to then City Attorney Terry Ford. Ford did not return our repeated calls, texts, and emails seeking comment. James McMahon is now the chief in Highland Park, appointed by new Mayor Glenda McDonald last year. To her credit, Mayor McDonald overruled her own attorney's advice and released the body cam video we just showed you. Both Mayor McDonald and Chief McMahon say that the video is ugly, but that citizens deserved to see it. And I think that's a very important step here. They say they're a much more transparent department. They're holding officers accountable. This is a good demonstration that that's the case. But obviously, this was an ugly scene that was kept hidden from his next department.
And so the next step you just mentioned for Player?
He's facing a number of felonies, as is his partner. They're going to be back in court in July, and we'll see what happens with that.
We'll see what happens.
But this all could have been avoided, Warren says, if we had just known about it. We wouldn't have hired him. He wouldn't have been in that position to do what he's accused of
Well,
doing.
the more you bring it to light, hopefully things will change and chiefs will be more transparent and accountable for what their officers do in the public.
I hope so.
All right. Thank you, Ross, as always, for your good work.